About like the first answer idea that you might have, or maybe how you got there. So I'll give you a second to read it. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it before. So did anybody figure out what the answer is if the presentation topic didn't give it away already? Yeah.
It's the mother.
Yeah, so the surgeon's a mother, but looking around the room I saw some confused, yeah.
Or his other dads.
Or that's So that's kind of the point of this drill. It's not necessarily to figure out the answer so much as to think about our tendency to associate specific jobs with specific people. So in this case, a surgeon was associated with a man typically. So these are just some jobs that are typically stereotyped to be more for a specific gender. I don't think I need to point out which column is which because of that. And it also goes into just daily things that we do or things that we like or like things that we might use. It also has to do with different traits that we use to describe people. So this presentation is going to focus on the intelligence one. But overall, gender bias, simply put, would be considered discrimination based on somebody's sex. So different treatment based on your opportunity, or different treatments or opportunities based on your gender or a group of people's gender. So for example, in the workplace, you might have a different salary or a different job opportunity specifically for you. Some places that we might see it every day, so in our language by saying things like man-made or salesman. In advertising, you can see here that there's different words for the genders. In our workplace, like I talked about, and then in our education and homes based off of the different roles that we're supposed to play. So the topic of this presentation is going to mainly focus on when these stereotypes emerge. So when we start thinking this way, basically, when we start associating gender with different traits. So that brings me to the title of my paper, which is Gender Stereotypes About Intellectual Ability Emerge Early and Influence Children's Interests. So this stereotype is focusing on the brilliance equals male stereotype that many people have. It explains gender gaps in many different occupations. Career aspirations for men and women are shaped by societal stereotypes about gender. So that was the first slide showing the different things that we might associate. But the question of this presentation, when do these stereotypes emerge? Little is known about that aspect of it. So the study consisted of 4 different experiments. The first experiment had 3 tasks to it. So they had a group of children, about 94 kids, I believe it was, and it was split half between boys and girls, all aged 5 to 7. The first task, they were told a story about a person who was really, really smart, and they used really, really smart because they were such young kids. And then they were asked to guess. They were shown 4 pictures, 2 male and 2 female. Sorry. And they had to guess which of 4 unfamiliar adults was the protagonist. So they had to base their guess based off of the pictures that they were shown of the men and the women. And they were supposed to be matched for attractiveness and for professional dress. So that was the first task. The second one was very similar. They were shown 6 pictures of couples of adults, so a male and a female in each picture. And they had to guess which adult in each pair was really, really smart, so the same idea. Then they had the third task was a puzzle, so they had a 2x4 grid. The top row had 4 pictures, 2 male, 2 female again, and then they were given blocks. So each block had a word on it. It was intelligent, nice, shoe, and hammer, and they had to match the block to the person that they felt fit best. So are there any questions about that? So then this was the data that they found. At age 5, there was no real difference in their gender associations with brilliance, but by the age of 6 in both of them, they saw a drop in the girls' rating. So this was the only difference between these two, is that in this data, they were shown pictures of both children and adults. Yeah.
Can you just quickly explain the y-axis?
Yeah, so if the children basically associated with their own gender, so if boys rated males, they were given a score of 1, and if they didn't, it was a score of 0. Any other questions? Okay. So then the researchers looked into what explained that drop in the girls' evaluation, so like why they would rate themselves as lower. So what are some ways that we like rate intelligence like in school? Like how do we measure it?
Grades.
Yeah, so like grades and test scores. So that's what they did next. They asked the same group of children to rate, they were shown 4 pictures of children, 2 male and 2 female, and they had to guess which was the top of their class and who received better grades. So that's what they did here. And we can see that it was kind of the opposite. So the girls had typically rated themselves as having better grades and being top of their class, which is kind of the opposite. So basically what they concluded from this was that the girls' ideas about who was brilliant didn't come from their perceptions of who did better in school. So does that make sense?
Wait, so just to clarify, this wasn't based off of like grades or numerical representations of intelligence. It was
pictures.
Okay.
So they were shown pictures and they had to guess based off of just that who was the top of their class. So the next thing that they looked into was whether or not their beliefs about brilliance shaped their interests. So if these gendered notions shaped what they liked to do. So they were shown these 2 games, Zarky and Impak, which they didn't actually play the games, they were just shown pictures of it. So basically what the researchers did was they showed them the picture and they said, I have this really awesome new game. And then they explained the directions and then basically gave them that little blurb at the end. So this isn't for everyone, it's only for kids who are really, really smart, and only smart children can be good at this game. So what they did was they showed them both games at different times, but for one game they would say really, really smart, and then the other one for kids who try really, really hard. So it was kind of like effort and intelligence, basically. So then they were asked 4 questions to measure their interest. So they were basically asked, would you want to play this game? And if they said yes, they would say, do you really, really want to play it, or just a little bit? So like kind of measuring that. Are there any questions on that? So then this is the data that they found. For the SMART game, they found that girls were much less interested than boys were in playing it, but for the Try Hard game, there was no real difference. So basically what they concluded from that was that the notions about who is smarter did impact their guide about which kind of interests they had. So that's for 6 and 7-year-olds. So what they did next was look specifically at the SMART game to see when that difference emerged again. And they found kind of the same results. At the age of 5, they didn't really show a difference in interest, but by the age of 6, they started to have these different notions. So basically what we can tell from that is that these notions about brilliance are acquired very early. So by the age of 6, they started to have these ideas that boys are smarter than girls. And then that was from the first study, and then from the activity with the games, we started to see children who were really, really smart the girls rated the boys as being really smart, so they were less interested in the games for the smart children. So some things that they didn't really talk about a ton in the paper were race and ethnicity. So 78% of the children were European American, which I think would be kind of make a big difference in the results of the paper. So they did do a study for the race and ethnicity. They grouped them into 2 categories and basically did the same, or they rated the data, and they found that the girls always rated as lower. So even though it was not very equal in race, they found the same results between the 2 groups. It was the same exact thing with the socioeconomic status, the same results. And then the level of education they didn't really talk about either. So they only had information for 35% of the children, which I think also would have a really big impact. And then they also said pictures were matched for attractiveness of professional dress, which they did based off of an Amazon survey. But again, I don't really know how specific or accurate that data would have been. So then the bigger question of this presentation is why at the age of 6 would these children start to have these notions? So some different ideas might be boys and girls toys, the things that they play with. It's also the year after they enter school typically, so that would be where the ideas might come from. their representation in the media, like these different things, like the TV shows that they watch and stuff like that. So basically, the earlier that children acquire this notion, the stronger its influence may be on their aspirations. So are there any questions on any of that, like the data?
So this is for you, or really for anyone in the audience, because it's speculative. But I think the thing that I think is most interesting about this study is how the idea of doing well in school and the idea of being brilliant start diverging, and how that doesn't seem to influence the girls' own perception of themselves or of other women, even though they and the boys almost were ranking girls as doing better in school. So I wonder with you guys, why do you think that is? What is it? So clearly doing well in school does not equal brilliance in their brains, does not equal smart. So I'm wondering what you guys think about that and where these other ideas maybe come from.
I think it would have been interesting to know if their teachers in their first year of school were male or female, like if they had one teacher, if they had a teacher for different subjects, if like men were teaching math and science and then women were teaching like language arts, stuff like that, or art classes.
Yeah, and that's what they were talking about when they were saying that they didn't really have that much information on the school that they had the level of education. They had that information for 35% of the students, which it would have been helpful to have more of that. And also the education level of the parents.
And also, so when they were looking at pictures in the beginning, the first task, were there pictures of other children or pictures of adults? Do you know?
So the first task was, so for this one, for graph A, it was only pictures of adults. So they were showing 4 pictures of adults. In graph C, it was a mix of children and adults.
I think it would be interesting for the one where they saw the pictures of the adults, because they might even see their parents rather than themselves in the photos.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Like if their parents do certain jobs.
Yeah.
To the question you were asking, I think maybe a lot of it has to do with sort of the academic socialization process. Over time, typically boys begin to be a lot more outspoken in class, and oftentimes people associate that kind of forward, confident behavior with being brilliant. And on the other hand, if you're someone who really, really has to work hard, there's sort of a negative correlation in terms of your thought with respect to what constitutes brilliance. So oftentimes we look at people for whom school is easy and we assume, oh my goodness, that person must be brilliant. And we're working really, really hard. We assume that hard work isn't necessarily correlated with brilliance. And so I think that process, along with some of this information you shared with respect to how girls are portrayed in various contexts, might influence how they're socialized and think about brilliance.
Yeah, and that definitely lines up with the data from the games, the IMPOC and the other one. It showed how because I think the results said that girls were more likely to play the really the effort game, like the try hard game, or that was a little more inclusive, but it was definitely a big margin in terms of who wanted to play the smart game. So I think that shows that kind of correlates with the fact that girls think they get better grades is because they are more likely to try harder.
Yeah. Any other questions?
To the point that was just made, there's also a fair bit of research that suggests that people avoid tasks that confirm maybe a negative stereotype they may have about themselves. So if girls are going through school and they're digesting this steady diet of I'm not smart, when oftentimes faced with a task that might confirm that stereotype, they are likely to avoid that. And that's, I think, consistent with the research in other areas with respect to race, ethnicity, ability, and other kinds of social identifiers.